Mohammed Atta, right?
Mohammed Atta, that's correct.
And he was one of the two. Were they good pilots?
I have checked today with the instructor and with the examiner who did the flight test, and they were average pilots.
Average. They had to go on to, now with your training, they couldn't go on and fly a 757 or a 767, so they go on to jet school.
Yeah,
were you shocked by all of this? Did they ever look suspicious? Did you ever have any inkling that these people might be involved? And again, this is all just conjecture. We don't know that they were the pilots on any of these planes.
No,
what do you make of it?
Well, I was shocked yesterday when it happened in the United States with the tragedy. Today, it was at my doorstep and not 2,000 miles away. We were in shock, and we're still in shock. We had no knowledge, of course. None of my people, I have 48 employees in Venice. None of them had any idea, of course. It's unbelievable. The feeling we have is undescribable. It's terrible.
Now, Rudy, if they were involved, they had been planning this for a long time.
Well, yeah, the first day when we saw what happened, we thought, you know, like every other American, would this be planned a long time ahead, et cetera, et cetera. We know now that they were flying with us from July to November. And after our flight school, they went to another flight school, so they've been planning this quite a while.
In the questioning, did the FBI give you an indication that they were strong suspects?
They did not spoke to me about the questioning because that happened at 2:30, 2:40 a.m. this morning, and they called me at 7 o'clock this morning. I briefly talked to the FBI when they're ready to leave the office, and they indicated to my employees that they thought that these were prime suspects. Yes, sir.
I guess in your life of training people to be pilots, you never thought that you would have people use you to go on to do terroristic acts.
No, you don't think about that. We do all the necessary work to know who customers are. We have a lot of foreign students coming over. These people were foreigners, but they came over directly in the front door. They said they've been flying with other flight schools in the United States. They were not happy. Choose our school to finalize their training.
Rudy, thank you. I know how tough this must be for you. Rudy Deckers, the owner of Huffman Aviation International.
Thank you.
We meet now, thank you. Three experts on the subject of terrorism. Here now in Los Angeles is Brian Jenkins. He returns again. He's a consultant to governments and private sector, senior advisor to the president of the RAND Corporation. In Washington is Christopher Whitcomb, FBI supervisory special agent, a former member of the elite FBI hostage rescue team, and author of a terrific book, Cold Zero, Inside the FBI Hostage Rescue Team. Also in Washington is Peter Bergen, CNN's terrorism analyst who was working on a book about Osama bin Laden and interviewed bin Laden 4 years ago. Brian, what do you make first of this Boston thing today?
Well, I think we're going to...
SWAT teams going in and...
I think we're going to see a very, very quick action, as I mentioned yesterday. An operation of this size is going to leave a lot of footprints, a lot of fingerprints, a lot of clues. And the action in Boston we saw today, the revelations about the flight school that we just saw repeated now, are the kind of information that we are going to see developing over the next several days. So I think the investigation will move very, very quickly, at least insofar as identifying the actual participants in the attack.
Christopher, if it gets to the point as we have promised that we will take them out, we will rid them from this planet in a sense, we are at war with them, how do you do that, Christopher? How do you take out a bin Laden or someone like a bin Laden who's hidden, who moves around, and who may be under cover of the country he lives in?
Well, I don't know about taking him out, Larry, but I think we have a lot of options. One of them obviously is military. The other, because this is a law enforcement operation and because we have to go with the justice system and we want to bring ultimately these people to justice, we've done in the past operations which are referred to as renditions, where we go into other countries with the cooperation of those countries, of course, and bring people back to the United States.
Yeah. The public, though, I think 94% of the public, Christopher, wants us to go in somewhere and do something. Do you understand that?
No, I understand it's a very reasonable thing to want to bring these people to justice, but I want to point out that we've done this in the past, going way back to the mid-'80s with Fawaz Yunus, who was an aircraft hijacker, and moving through the 90s with people like Emil Kanzi and Ramzi Youssef, people like that we've reached out to these people in foreign countries and brought them back to the United States. We've done this in the past, and there's no doubt in my mind that we'll find these people and we'll bring them back one way or another.
Peter, what can you tell us briefly about bin Laden? What is he like?
When I met him in '97, he spoke in a very mild-mannered way. He was somewhat polite. He bears himself in a slightly haughty manner. But he delivered his words of rage against the United States, and the words were full of rage, but the manner was very mild. Just going to your point about if bin Laden is in fact behind all these attacks, an operation, as Mr. Whitcomb referred to go in and perhaps snatch him, as was the case with Ramzi Youssef and the World Trade Center bombing, this would be an order of magnitude very different, because unlike Ramzi Youssef, who was essentially operating by himself and there was a $2 million reward on his head, Osama bin Laden is surrounded by dozens of battle-hardened veterans who are intimately familiar with the rocky, difficult terrain of Afghanistan. It would be a very, very messy operation to go in and either snatch him or even attempt to kill him. I think the United States has considered this in the past and dismissed it in '98.
Brian, could you, well, I guess the public would look at this simply, could you bomb him out?
I don't know that you could bomb him out. I mean, I think that the magnitude of this operation is going to call for a qualitatively different response than we've seen in the past to acts of terrorism. The shock that's turning to grief, that will soon turn to anger on the part of the American people, is going to demand something more than a salvo of cruise missiles. I think really what the administration is going to be building toward is more of a sustained campaign, a sustained series of operations that will involve both diplomacy and military operations designed to create an environment that will ultimately allow us to go in and, if indeed it turns out to be Osama bin Laden, then to attempt to capture or to deal with him in another way.
Now, what do you... Christopher, in the last chapter of your book, you say crisis resolution has become an art in this country, and that's good because terrorism is coming. You don't need an army to lay siege to a country anymore. Obviously, we saw that yesterday. What can you do about it? Christopher.
Well, it's a complicated issue, Larry. I wrote that because we're talking about terrorism being spread by the media, and I talk about all you're needing is a pipe bomb and some good air coverage. We've gone way beyond that in the past couple days to an extraordinary attack on the country. But I think what we have now is a unique opportunity to bring all the resources of the United States together. We need the political will of the people and the elected officials, obviously, to do something here. But this is an aspect for the military, an aspect for the intelligence community, and for law enforcement, and really need to bring all of those together to go after them. I agree completely that this is going to be very difficult to go into Afghanistan, but there are some avenues we can pursue.
Peter Bergen, what do you think about the information we learned that one of these planes, the plane apparently that left Dulles, was going to go to the White House, or maybe Air Force One?
Well, I mean, that is what's being reported. Clearly, the White House is the ultimate symbol. Bin Laden's people are very interested in attacking symbols of United States government, whether it's embassies or warships or symbols of America's economic might, as in the World Trade Center, it appears. So clearly it makes sense. These people operate on symbols. They're very interested in anniversaries. The anniversary of the introduction of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia was the occasion 8 years later for the bombing of the U.S. embassies in Africa. So I think it makes sense that it might be related to bin Laden in that sense.
Brian, finally we're going to see more than less?
More, I think...
acts?
I think we have to. I think we have to assume that possibility. That's not a prediction, but certainly as we mobilize to respond, there
assume the
will.
worst.
Beg pardon?
Assume the worst.
I think we have to assume that there will be more attacks. They may not be on this scale because this was months into planning, but we cannot presume that we will be able to engage in a worldwide combat against a terrorist network, a series of terrorist networks, and have immunity in this country. It was demonstrated. We don't have it yesterday. It can be demonstrated again.
No. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all. Here's a brief note of what was said by President Bush earlier today, and then we'll meet our next guest. Watch.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war. This will require our country to unite in steadfast determination and resolve. Freedom and democracy are under attack.
We're back. We're joined now in Saratoga, California, by Alice Hoagland. Her son, Mark Bingham, called her from the hijacked United Airlines Flight 93 that left Newark and crashed in Pennsylvania. There you see his picture. In New York is Laura Van Auken. Her husband, Kenneth, is missing. He was working on the 102nd floor of the World Trade Center North Tower. In New York at St. Vincent's Hospital are Karen Wiley and Michael Rossweiler. They are searching for their missing father, Roger Mark Rossweiler. And also in New York is Gil Baker, the New Yorker who helped out after the bombing and later managed to shoot home video of that rescue effort. We'll start with Alice Hoagland. Your son was on the plane. He called you and said what, Alice?
He said, I just want to let you know that I love you all. There are 3 men on board who have taken over the aircraft, and they say they have a bomb. And at that point, we were cut off. He wasn't able to say anything else. The conversation lasted about a minute. He was very intent on telling us that he loved us, trying to impart other information, but he was thwarted in that.
Alice, you are a flight attendant for that airline?
Yes, I am. I'm a flight attendant for United Airlines based in San Francisco, as is my sister, Candace. Mark was flying on Candy's companion pass. That's Candy on the right there. It's Mark in the middle and me on the left.
Now, later we would learn from another passenger calling that the men on that plane apparently, from what we've learned, attacked the hijackers, and that would probably the cause of it going down in Pennsylvania and not in Washington somewhere, so that you and your son and the others were heroes. How did you feel upon learning that?
Well, it's no surprise to us. We know that Mark is a very take-charge sort of guy. He doesn't back away from a fight. He is very hands-on. He is wonderful in a clinch. I know that he was seated in seat 4D, which is up in first class, so he was very visible to these hijackers, and he was also close to them. And it is very likely that he participated, if he was at all able, in that attempted intervention in the last there. And yes, indeed, if that is the case, then those brave people that did that were successful in saving the lives of many hundreds of people on the ground, and we take a lot of comfort in that.
You should. Alice, thank you. Laura Van Auken is in New York. Her husband, Kenneth, is missing. He was working on the 102nd floor. What does he do, Laura?
He works for Cantor Fitzgerald, and he's a bond broker. And he was on the 102nd floor, and we just haven't heard anything at all.
Did you talk to him at all? Did he call home?
He called home. He left a message, and that's the last I heard from him.
That message was left on your answering machine?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Let's listen to the voice of Kenneth Van Auken calling home.
I love you. I'm in the World Trade Center. The building was hit by something. I don't know if I'm going to get out, but I love you very much. I hope I'll see you later. Bye.
Boy, Laura, what must it be like to hear that?
It was just horrible. It was really just horrible. I could hear the terror in his voice, and he was trying to sound like he was calm for us, but you could hear the chaos in the background and the terror in his voice.
You have children, Laura?
I do. I have 2 children. My son is 14, Matthew, and my daughter is 12. Her name is Sarah.
How are they handling this?
Oh, Sarah's a mess. She's goes in waves with hysterical crying and back and forth, and Matthew is in some denial, I think, but you know, he's obviously beginning to see that, you know, his dad's not contacted us yet, so we're waiting.
Laura, did you get the message before you had turned on the television to see what was happening, or after?
Before. I got the message before I turned on the television, and turned on the television right away.